This is the USAACE-8, 8 minutes with an Army aviation subject matter expert. Let's fly with a topic, the Army Flight School Experience.
Hi, I'm Major Kim Smith. I'm the commander for Delta 1st and 145th and been here for the last 3 years.
I'm Lieutenant Jett, prior service, and I've been here with my family for about a year and a half.
We note that Army Flight School students are diverse in background and include ROTC graduates, street-to-seat warrants, partner nation soldiers, or prior service soldiers. So let's dive in. Arriving at Fort Rucker.
Right, so things are a little bit different now with COVID. When you first get here, you're going to come into building 315, which is located near Lister. You'll sign in there and they'll give you instructions. For those going to walks, usually you have a report date to come in prior to your class date, and that's 10 days to give you time for that in processing. If you're vaccinated, you don't have to ROM, but if you are not vaccinated, you'll have to ROM 7 days when you get here. So you have to factor that in prior to your report date. Main thing is reading your orders. And for guys that have PTDY, you can go for house hunting, look for a house. If you're in walks, they do give you that opportunity to take PTDY after the completion of walks and before you start bullock.
Do you have to live on Fort Rucker?
No, you don't have to live on Fort Rucker. You can request to get a house here at Fort Rucker. We got about half and half, and a lot of students who live right outside of Post, and we got a lot of people that live along that Freedom Drive in apartments.
Knowing that you're coming to Fort Rucker, go ahead and look at the websites and resources of what's available, especially if you have families and you plan on living on Post. Go ahead and contact the housing so that you can go ahead and get something set up so you're not waiting until last minute.
What are the phases of flight training?
You'll do BOLIC or WOBIC. That's 5 weeks for BOLIC, 3 weeks for WOBIC. And then you'll go into SEER, and you'll do SEER. In between SEER, you start Common Core, and that's your initial entry phase training, where you'll be flying the Lakota and learning how to initially fly. Then you'll go into selecting your advanced airframe. Then you'll go into flying your advanced aircraft. BOLIC Phase 2 is also called Aviation Leadership Exercise. It's a 3-week course with both the warrants and the lieutenants. It's kind of a capstone, and it teaches you about mission planning. You'll be on hold status if you're waiting to start different courses of training. You'll get put on different details, taskings. For the warrant officers, they generally do on-det. For lieutenants, you guys may have SDO shifts or work as student leaders, depending on how long that whole time frame is. So expect to be put on taskings while you're waiting for different phases of flight training.
How is your aircraft determined?
So selection process is based on an order of merit list. Everything that you do here counts towards that. So try your best. Any type of points or scoring events will go through that. So the number one lieutenant or warrant officer, and they're split between lieutenants and warrant officers. And then once that comes through, you put in a wish list, and your cadre here will help you in making sure you put your wish list in the system of number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 of what aircraft that you want to fly. And then we'll take that OML and your wish list and try to match you the best that we can. Every selection changes based upon the amount of airframes that we can give. So we may have one selection class that's very heavy on 64s, or maybe the next selection class is very heavy on UH-60s. For the National Guard guys, reserve guys, they know what airframe that they're flying whenever they get here.
I would just add in there, you can have what you want to fly, but don't be dead set on it, because there is limited selection of aircraft, and in the end, you're still flying the aircraft. So if you don't get what you want, don't be heartbroken.
What is the best way to manage time in Common Core?
I always brief the guys coming in, and I know it's been a while since I went through flight school, is find that balance, and that's really important. You're going to want to study a lot, but you also need to make sure that you take a break mentally for yourself, or you'll burn out. A good tool is use Saturdays as your days for you. Get back in the books on Sundays and study. Do your daily questions, get them all knocked out over the weekend so you don't have to worry about them, and study what your IPs tell you.
I can definitely say I struggled with that. I have a wife and 4 kids. So most of my time, whenever I wasn't flying, it was a little bit of study time, some family time, and then tried to find some personal time in there. My grades suffered a little bit, but I still made it work.
What qualities and behaviors make for a successful student pilot?
You're here to be a flight school student, so that's your number one priority. The one thing that you can control is your academics, so stay in the books the best that you can. It may take you a little bit longer to figure out how to hover compared to your stick buddy. That'll come with time, but definitely having that priority of being here as a flight school student, getting in the books and studying as much as you can, and controlling your academics is really big.
And I would say a lot of focus and determination. There's going to be times where you're not doing as good as you want to, but you've got to stick with it. Don't give up.
It'll be like a roller coaster almost event. You can have a great day of flying, and the next day you may not be flying so good or do bad on a check ride. Your battle buddies will help get you through that process, and then, come in the next day refreshed, and don't beat yourself down too much because, you're still flying every single day.
What are the physical fitness requirements while you're here?
You'll have organized PT during your bullock phases or while you're on hold. But once you're at the flight line, it's finding your own time to do that, and that can be a challenge for some students.
What are some good resources to use or have before coming to flight school?
I wouldn't stress too much about it prior to coming here. We kind of cater flight school based upon all different types of backgrounds. So you may have someone that has aviation experience sitting next to you in the class, and maybe you studied economics or don't have much of an aviation background. We tie in the basics here so that way we streamline it across the board. Once you get here for bullock, you'll be able to start looking into the books, talk to your cadre about recommendations. We also have an R2 team that helps out with study habits that's here. So I wouldn't stress too much prior to getting here.
I know one of the issues I had, I was one of the last classes coming through for the 67s. So I didn't know whether I was going to be doing the 67s or 72s. So I wasn't sure what to study. But all the students coming in know that they're going to be flying 72s, so they can start getting in the books on that, especially emergency procedures and limits. And one thing I was told before, memorize first and understand later. If you can memorize it now, then the understanding will come a whole lot easier later.
Learn the 5 nines, the emergency procedures, because that's one thing that you can't fail. You'll have these tests and you have to know them verbatim. And again, it takes time for you to understand what you're memorizing. And it may not be until later on, when you get to your first unit that it finally clicks.
And if you know the numbers and everything first, then when they're actually teaching it, it makes a whole lot more sense. So it's best to memorize it before you actually get here. And when you're actually up in the helicopter, you catch on a whole lot faster.
Is there anything else you would like to tell potential students?
Understanding, hey, you're here as a flight school student, that's your number one priority, and have fun with it. Even if you have a bad day flying, you're flying every single day, and learn your classmates, get to know them, because aviation is a small community and you'll continue to run into each other later on down the road, and you build that connections now, and your battle buddies will help you get out and get through flight school.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the USAACE-8, brought to you by the United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence.